Okay, so tonight we're starting the book of Shemot, Exodus, the first Parasha. This one is a very different book than Bereshit. You can call Bereshit perhaps the introduction, whereas Shemot is more the formation of the Jewish people. Even though their formation begins in Egypt, nonetheless, this formation is a very important part of their growing up and maturing. The reason for that is because they are exposed to a very different kind of civilization and culture than what they will be representing to the world. Two civilizations, two cultures that are going to be clashing. Two very different types of thinking, two different types of faith and religions. Everything about Egypt is different than what Judaism is going to represent. What we find in Egypt is an incredible amount of cruelty, not just because they enslaved other people, but in the way they treated foreigners, and even perhaps the way they treated their own. Judaism is completely against that type of culture, that type of relationship to others. In Judaism, there's an emphasis on chemla, on compassion, to be compassionate towards others, towards all human beings, not just your own. So we're dealing with very, very different types of people. You will find in Parashat Shemot, as well as in Vayera and Bo, an emphasis on Hatzalah. Hatzalah means to save somebody from trouble. Whether it is the incident where the midwives, Shifra and Pu'ah, saved the little Jewish children, even though they were instructed to throw them into the river, into the Nile, as soon as the babies are born. They could not do that. They defied the orders. They feared God. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Where did they derive that courage to do so? But you also have Moshe Rabbeinu playing an important role as he's growing up. We see that in various situations. For example, you have Moshe Rabbeinu saving the Jew from the hands of the Egyptian who was abusing him. You have the incident where Moshe Rabbeinu separated two Jews that were fighting. And of course you have the Hatzalah, the saving of the Jewish nation by God from Egypt. So these are various examples of salvation, where someone takes an active role in helping another individual. One of the most fascinating, however, it comes as a big surprise, and that is an Egyptian young woman who saves Moshe Rabbeinu, takes him out of the water, and raises him. This is an Egyptian woman, but she's not an ordinary Egyptian woman. Her name is Bitya. Bitya, the daughter of Paro, of all people. Paro that issued all those terrible decrees for his daughter to oppose her dad, to go against his beliefs. There was something special about her, apparently. And what is so special about her? The verse says, the pasuk says, Vatachmol. And she was compassionate. She had pity for that little baby. Wow, pity, compassion. That an Egyptian should demonstrate that was very unusual in that culture. Especially it was against the orders of the king. But Bitya is special in many ways. As a result of her being very different than the rest of the Egyptians, she made a very important decision in her life. She's going to convert. She converted to Judaism. She converted to the beliefs of the Jews. Back then, Judaism still did not exist as an official faith. But she said, this is what I want. I'm against what Egyptians represent. I'm against their type of life. I don't believe in this type of cruelty. This is not how you handle other human beings. This is how you treat other people. She had chemla. She had empathy, compassion, pity, all those important qualities. And that is what helped her, of course, make the decision. I want to be like them. I want to join them. There's an incredible story that I read recently. Could have been a year or two ago. There was a former neo-Nazi who had dreams about Kabbalah out of nowhere. He can't explain it. He dreamt about Kabbalah. He dreamt so much about it that he investigated it. He investigated Kabbalah, he investigated Judaism. And the more he investigated, the more he became interested. And now he's in the process of learning to convert to Judaism. Maybe he already by now converted. And the question is, what pulled him to Judaism? It's one thing to be interested in Kabbalah, but is that enough? No. If you asked him, he says, I noticed that Jews care about each other. They're kind to each other. So he noticed what we call the pillar of Chesed, Amud Chesed, that is very, very important to us. Very important in Judaism. Chesed. And as a result of all that Chesed, he decided, this is what I want for myself. Now that's very interesting because not everybody just makes such a drastic change in their life just because they notice Chesed. So we need to understand a little bit more in depth. What is it in Chesed? Why was it Chesed, the kindness, that triggered in him a major change in his life? I mean, this is basically 180 degrees from what he believed, from what he wanted for himself in life. And here he's interested in this religion because of Chesed. We need to understand that human beings as a whole, regardless of their culture, go through various stages in life. Hopefully, as we grow older, we also mature. We don't only grow physically, we don't only age, but we also mature. We have a better understanding, a greater clarity about life, hopefully. So this clarity, this maturity does not happen at once, it happens in stages. The Jewish people are also going through stages of maturity. We're talking about spiritual maturity as well. They are inheriting values, the values of their forefathers, the values of kindness, the fear of God, the Torah of our forefathers, and soon the Torah that Hashem gives us. So they have all of that. They brought it with them to Egypt. They're familiar with it. But if you look at all the values, somehow Chesed stands out as being number one. Abraham Avinu is called the pillar of kindness. As I've explained before, it doesn't mean Yitzchak and Yaakov were not kind. It's just that he represented kindness. He taught kindness. He exemplified kindness to the whole world. So why does kindness appear first in the order of values that we need to develop, acquire? Order is important. You have order, for example, even in the ingredients that are used to bake bread or challah. Even though there's some differences of opinion of which ones go first, but basically, it's important that you follow instructions. For example, you may want to put the water, then the salt, then the sugar, then the flour, and then the yeast. It's important to follow the right order in order to be able to bake the best possible bread that will grow properly and feel right and so forth. So it's all about order. The same is true with midot, with character. The first and foremost midah that needs to be developed, needs to be taught perhaps, is chesed, kindness. Kindness is the foundation for Yirat Shamayim. Here we're talking about the importance of fear of heaven. We always do. A Jew without the proper fear of heaven is capable of committing all kinds of offenses, unless he's held back by the fear of heaven. So there's no doubt that fear of heaven is of prime importance. But before Yirat Shamayim, there has to be a healthy dose of chesed. Chesed, kindness, is therefore the foundation of everything. After that will come Yirat Shamayim, and hopefully after that will also come the pillar of Torah. With this, now we can understand the neo-Nazi internalized the importance of Chesed. He didn't just observe Chesed amongst the Jewish people, he internalized it. He realized the importance of it. He was able to put two and two together and realize, wow, Olam Chesed Yibaneh, the world really is built on the foundation of kindness. Because if you don't have enough of it, you're going to have war. You're going to have tremendous wars, which we've had for thousands of years because of a lack of kindness. And when we say kindness, we mean to care about others. It's not necessarily that you're actually helping out. It's just to care about others. It's just to care. Not to be selfish about yourself, not to only think about yourself, not to only want it for yourself, to want to share. Kindness encompasses many ideas. So apparently, this neo-Nazi realized the significance of this, not only because that's what we do, that's what we practice, but how important this is. And when he internalized it, it immediately attracted him and said to himself, why should I hurt people? Why should I hate people? Why should I be angry at people? Once you adapt, internalize Chesed, it changes your entire mindset. Wow. It is possible to care about others instead of hating them. It is possible to help instead of just thinking about yourself. To share. Wow. Completely different type of thinking. And that's what got him going. This is what Judaism supposedly teaches. I say supposedly because even though this is of course what we teach, not everybody lives by it. You're supposed to. So as soon as he got hold of this, he realized the importance of it, and of course he wanted to adopt this in his life. So he's in the process of converting. What you find with the midwives is something very similar. They were very good-natured, they were certainly compassionate, but the Torah does not point that out so much. The Torah points out that they were God-fearing. Why? Because apparently it's not enough to be kind. A lot of people are kind-hearted, they have compassion, but that may not be sufficient. Because perhaps in this case, their life is in danger. They can lose their job, they can lose their life if they don't follow orders. It's very nice of you that you're compassionate, but if there's no Yirat Elokim, if there's no fear of heaven, then that kindness may stop when things become too difficult or risky. So the Torah therefore does not talk so much there, in that example about their chesed, it talks about how they were God-fearing, and that is how they were capable of self-sacrifice, of doing something so risky. So the question is, where did they have this from? Where did they learn this from? So if you look at the Parasha, you will notice that the Torah describes how all the families of Yaakov, his children, came to Egypt. And the Torah says, Ish uveto ba'u, each man and his home came. What does that mean? Besides his home, meaning his family, his children. The fact that it says Beito also represents the education, the chinuch, the values. They brought that to Egypt too. So they're not just there physically, they're not just there with their family, with their children, they're there with the values that they brought along. So therefore, these young women had those values and were not about to let go of them even though they were facing danger themselves. That becomes very tricky. It takes courage as well. There's other characteristics that are essential in order to succeed in demonstrating that you're kind. Courage, yes, it is definitely important. But if there would not be Yirat Elokim, if there would not be the fear of heaven, they would not be as motivated. They wouldn't be as strong, as resilient. It's very possible to break someone by torturing them, by pressuring them, by tempting them. In all kinds of ways you can break people. People are frail. If you have Yirat Elokim, the fear of heaven, is of prime importance to you, then, of course, it will be easier for you to resist all kinds of temptations. People who easily give in, apparently are not very strong in Yirat Shamayim. How could you just easily give in? There was once a young man who came crying to his rabbi, "Rabbi, I have a hard time with my evil inclination. I just succumb. I fall so much. I don't know what to do." The rabbi asked him, "Tell me, do you ever win? Or do you always fall?" He says, "Rabbi, I fall. I asked you a question. Do you ever win? Do you ever resist?" And he says, "Yeah, once in a while I resist. I succeed in resisting and I don't fall." I said, "Thank God that you're able to once in a while defeat your evil inclination. It shows that you have the strength, you have the potential, you have the proper direction. Go ahead and try to do this as many times as possible, that you be the one that will win and not the evil inclination." No one can, I think, claim that he always wins. Sometimes we fall. Sometimes we make a mistake, depending, of course, on the level of maturity. But more important than the maturity is how much Yirat Shamayim the person has. The more fear of heaven, the easier and hopefully the better he will be able to resist the evil inclination. One who does not have chesed is at a tremendous disadvantage. What does it tell you about someone who has no chesed whatsoever? It means that he has no hakarat hatov. He's completely ungrateful. The fact that he's not able to do chesed to another human being means that he doesn't realize, doesn't appreciate any favor that was done to him. Because if he would truly appreciate it, recognize it, and communicate his thanks to that individual, it will be easy for him to return the favor and to be kind to others too, to learn from them. But when a person does not at all make any effort to be kind to others, that means that he's totally thinking of himself. Thinking of himself means that he's not grateful. He doesn't recognize that people were kind to him. He might even think it's coming to him, or simply ignores the favor. Without this midah, how is he ever going to be God-fearing? To be God-fearing requires a certain amount of recognition that Hashem has been kind to me. Look how much He has done for me. Look how much I need Him, I depend on Him. So without the minimal of chesed and understanding of its importance, one is going to have a very difficult time ever becoming God-fearing. The rabbis take this one step further. And they say, "Mi shekofer betovato shel adam, sofo kofer b'kadosh baruch hu." Whoever denies, ignores a favor that was done to him by a human being, in the end will deny God. If he totally ignores, denies the goodness, the kindness that people have demonstrated to him, one day he will deny the existence of God. Where do we see that in this week's Parasha? Paro. Paro, in the very beginning, was appreciative of Yosef. Look how much Yosef did to Egypt. How much he did for the Egyptians. And what does it say in the Torah about Paro? There's a new king in town, a new sheriff in town, that did not recognize or did not know Yosef. So some say he was a new king that did not know what Yosef has done, but some say it was the same one, just that he decided to ignore. He was ungrateful. But even if you say he was a new king, he was still ungrateful, because he could have easily have found out what Yosef has done, all his contributions for Egypt. He chose to ignore it. This same Paro, therefore, later on says, "Mi Hashem." Who is this God, Moshe, that you're telling me to listen to him? Who is this God? You see? He denies all the good, all the kindness of other people. He will deny the existence of God. Now, to be about chesed, to be kind, doesn't happen overnight. Yes, it's true that some people are kinder by nature, but we're talking about the average human being. It's something that needs to be developed. And that is why I began with this concept of maturity. We all hopefully will mature in more than one way. Kindness requires time. Just like love. The love between a husband and wife is not automatic. It takes time to develop. When the two give to each other, they get to know each other, they appreciate each other, cooperate, respect. It requires several ingredients, important ingredients to make it work. But it takes time. Everybody is in agreement that even if the ingredients are there, it will take time to develop and become strong. So in the same way that the relationship between a husband and wife takes time to develop, so it is with chesed. It takes time. It takes practice. It takes a certain amount of knowledge. How does Hashem make it therefore happen? People don't just learn it from a book. People are not necessarily just told to be like that. Hashem sends us all kinds of challenges. Opportunities present themselves in life that will touch on chesed. For example, there could be many situations, not one, where people will be challenged through the act of charity. There's a poor man who's in need, who's begging. And if he's not directly begging you, you find out about it. It makes no difference. These opportunities will always present themselves. Unless you live in a cave, I mean, you will always see poor people, beggars, people in need. Hashem created that. He wanted that there should be rich and poor. Those that will need and those that will hopefully provide. This is how we will have, through this interaction, chesed. So opportunities will present themselves where you will be asked to help out a poor man. There may be a situation that will present itself where you will see somebody drowning perhaps in a swimming pool, in the ocean, and you can swim. And that will be an opportunity to help another human being. Or perhaps somebody in jail. That is another possibility. Opportunities that will present themselves where we can be of help. We can be of service. In some way. There's all kinds of ways. I just gave you a few examples. What is the condition, the most important prerequisite, in order to be able to help this individual who's having a hard time? Don't think that it's the money for the poor man, or the ability to swim to save the one who's drowning, or the ability to hire a good attorney to get this guy out of jail. These are just tools, of course. These are important tools, but that's not enough. What will be necessary? What's the prerequisite to actually follow through? The midah, the characteristic of chemla, compassion. If a person has no compassion, then he won't care. He won't try. He won't hire anyone. He won't take any money out of his pocket, simply because he doesn't care. So you need to have chemla, which is what we've been talking about from the very beginning. Compassion for another human being. Read through history, and you will see how many nations, groups of people, butchered others. Exact opposite of chemla. Killed men, women, and children that they couldn't care less whatsoever. No questions asked. Where is that from? A total lack of chemla, total lack. They don't believe it. It's not in their dictionary, compassion. What's that? It's to destroy, to dominate, to rule, to abuse, to take them as slaves. The whole history of mankind is replete with many such examples until this very day. I'm not talking about cannibalism right now, where people actually would eat other human beings. That's already extreme. But there was something called human sacrifice. You'd be surprised as to what some nations did when they conquered their enemy, what they did with their enemy, with their skulls, the skull of the enemy. All kinds of rituals, all kinds of things that they did. Very cruel, no compassion whatsoever. So here we're talking about developing chesed, wanting to be kind towards others, helping. You need to start off with Chemla, compassion. Once chesed is developed, once we understand its importance, it will become second nature. It will almost come naturally to us because we will appreciate or recognize its importance. So once people understand its value and its importance, it will be easier to practice. A lot of people simply do not even understand that something like this needs to exist in this world. And that is why we have so many struggles, so many wars, so many problems, so much lack of unity, instead of people doing for each other. So there has to be a certain maturity, a certain amount of understanding and appreciating what this chesed really is. Not too long ago, there was a story with a policeman. It happens in many places in the winter where the river freezes. And some people take a risk, a chance. They walk on this river thinking that it's okay, it's hard enough, but many times they fall. Very, very dangerous because we're talking about not just deep waters, cold waters. Even if you know how to swim, you may not be able to survive for too long. Very risky. Anyway, a policeman noticed a woman who had just fallen through the ice to a very cold river. And he went after her. He jumped in with his clothes on and saved her. They asked the policeman, "How did you do it? Why were you willing to do something like that? It's dangerous." And you know what he said? "I didn't think twice about it. This is my duty. This is part of my job, is to help people." So he had an easier time doing it because this was his job. Because this was his job, it was his responsibility. He didn't have to think too much about it. True chesed is when you don't have to think about it. It's become natural. It is the right thing to do. If I can do it, if I can be of help, why not? So in the same way that the policeman didn't think twice about it, when a person has matured in the attribute of chesed, in adopting this quality, and he has enough compassion to be able to practice it, he won't have to struggle too much with it. Should I do it or should I not do it? It will come naturally to him. The same is true with faith. You know, faith comes naturally to us because we grew up with it. But for people who have not grown up with it, it takes time to mature too. They have to get used to it until the point where they realize it's obvious. What needs to happen in order for it to become obvious and easy to implement in one's life? So Rabbi Kook of blessed memory says as follows. It comes in stages. Stage number 1, hekerut. You have to become acquainted with it. What is this faith? What is this set of values? What does Judaism represent? What is it? Hekerut. Stage number 1. Number 2, after you recognize what it is, what's involved, this will lead you, hopefully, to stage number 2, kavod. You will be respectful of it. A lot of people never end up practicing too much or adapting Judaism, even though they're Jewish, because they have no kavod for it, they have no respect for it. Why don't they have respect for it? Because they're totally ignorant. So you have to remove the ignorance. How? Hekerut. Get them to study it. Become familiar with it. Come to a seminar, to classes. Study about it. After that, you will possibly, hopefully, come to the stage called kavod. You will respect it. At the very least, respect. What comes after you respect it? With time, hopefully, you will come to stage number 3. Chiba. Techabev et ze. You will like it. You will appreciate it. You will see its beauty. Then will come step number 4. You will want to fulfill it and practice it. These 4 stages are very, very important if we want somebody to begin practicing. Just like there are stages we said in a relationship, husband and wife, where certain things have to happen and if they follow a certain order, and if it's a healthy relationship, and they share, of course, similar values, they appreciate each other, again, with stages, with time, hopefully they will bond. Mistakes happen all the time. That's okay. But one of the basic ingredients of any relationship is to be forgiving. Forgiveness is a branch of kindness. We realize nobody's perfect. We make mistakes. So if we are forgiving, that means we already have a certain maturity of understanding that people can make mistakes, and as long as they say I'm sorry, and as long as they want to succeed in this relationship, they will make an effort to avoid those mistakes in the future, an effort to improve the relationship because they care about it. So you need to have a certain awareness, of course, of what's necessary to overcome any difficulties that may arise. But it's not just that awareness, it's the willingness. Now, awareness by itself is very nice, but it's not enough. A willingness. And that willingness can only come if you appreciate it and you care so much about it. You can't live without it. So in the same way it happens in faith, that you've come to the point where you really appreciate it, stage number 3, it will be easier to practice it. And the same thing in a relationship, whether it's a relationship with God, a relationship with another human being, a marriage, there needs to be a certain understanding of how this is important, how it is something that we should appreciate, should care about. Don't you want to have somebody who cares about you, somebody who respects you, somebody that will cooperate with you, somebody with whom you can build a home? Isn't that something that hopefully most human beings will want to have? Well, then you have to work hard sometimes to achieve that. Once we understand the basics of what's involved in being kind and sensitive and compassionate towards others, it may be a little bit easier for us to appreciate the heroism of Mr. Sugihara. Probably this may be the first time you heard the name Sugihara. But Mr. Sugihara was a Japanese consul in Vilna, Lithuania during World War II. And it was through his actions that thousands of Jews were saved, because he gave them visas to Japan. Even though the Japanese government was against it, even though they told him clearly several times, stop giving visas unless all the conditions are met. But as you know, many times the conditions to get a visa were very difficult to have during the time of the war. And nonetheless, somehow he defied the orders of the Japanese government, even though this meant losing his job, getting into trouble, and perhaps even risking his life if the Germans would find out what he was doing. Thousands of visas he wrote. And even when he was leaving town, because they told him to close the consulate and to leave, out of the window of the train he threw visas. He wrote. I read somewhere that his hands hurted him so much because he was writing so much that his wife had to massage his fingers at night because he wrote so much. The stamp he gave over to someone to forge visas to go through Japan so they can eventually come to America or wherever the final destination was. That was the only way to get out of Russia, to go through to Japan. An incredible act of heroism. And the question is, why did he do it? Well, we had an opportunity to ask him. He lived till the mid-80s. And he was asked this question many, many times. What was it that made you do it? And of course, he said that he felt for these people. He had pity on them. He realized that if he did not help them, they would be killed. He had pity, he said. We know that he also was a hero. It was not just pity. It was heroism. It was courage, because he defied his government. So it wasn't just pity alone. But all of this, I think, is not enough to explain what he did. There have been others who, at the risk of losing their life, protected Jews. There have been others, but he did something very, very unique. And that is, he was prepared. He knew he was prepared to lose everything. Others were not necessarily prepared to lose everything, just they thought they can get away with it. They'll conceal their actions, they'll hide the Jew in their home. Maybe they won't be discovered, but here he was aware what he was doing was going to cost him his career. What was it then that enabled him to do something like that? I think that deep down, he was bothered by the actions of his government and the Nazis, of course. He was completely against their way of thinking, their worldview. He was completely opposed to the lack of humanity on the enemy's side. He was aware that these regimes were not humane at all. And he opposed that. He was completely against this type of thinking. And because of his opposition towards that, that gave him the strength to do what he did, despite the fact that he was going to lose so much. It meant to him, it was more important to him to oppose that, to go against that way of thinking, and to save as many people as he could. This is what you see in Egypt too. What happened in Egypt? Jews were hired by the Egyptians, were given the positions to be police. You make sure that those Jews under you do their job, enforce it, even if you have to be cruel towards them, even if you have to hit them, even if you have to punish them. And what does the Torah say? The police, the Jewish police, they took the beating and they did not beat their brothers. These police eventually became the elders. They were chosen to be the elders who, together with Moshe, enacted the laws, taught the Jews the Torah, made important decisions. The Zekenim, the elders, they were given this reward for being in that position, that type of responsibility, of being more involved in the decision-making, I guess, or the teaching of the Torah to the Jewish people. The elders. Why? Because they cared a lot about their brethren. They were willing to take the beating themselves, and not, chas v'shalom, God forbid, to abuse their power, their position, to punish another Jew. You have, unfortunately, the opposite. During World War II, you had people called kapos. I don't know if you heard about that. Kapos were Jews that were hired by the Germans or by the Polish. You're going to get a little bit of a better breakfast if you turn in a Jew, if you tell us if somebody's doing something wrong against the law. And some of them fell for it. They were not good. They fell for it. They succumbed to the temptation of having a little bit more cocoa or butter or whatever it was for their breakfast, where everyone did not have as much. They got a little bit more if they would cooperate with the Germans. So some of them, unfortunately, were very, very bad. They were very cruel. There were others who, of course, used that position to help Jews. There were all kinds of people that were put in a similar situation, and some came out heroes, and some cowards. What do we have to say about the cowards? One thing, I mean, we cannot judge them. We don't know what we would do if we would be in their place. But one thing we can say, chesed, kindness, was very far from their heart. They didn't understand or didn't know what it means to do chesed, to be kind and sensitive towards others. Now you can understand why Moshe is chosen as the leader. Moshe, you will be the leader. You will take out the Jewish people from Egypt. Why Moshe? Moshe has these qualities. He's compassionate. He's kind-hearted. He's sensitive. But how did it happen that Moshe became like that? He was growing up in an Egyptian home. Yes, but let's not forget, who raised them? Bitya. And of course, he had this from his mother too, from his real mother, from his parents. It was in the genes. He has a Jewish neshama, a soul. You can say all of that. It's possible. But there's one thing that the Torah describes about Moshe. Don't just say, okay, he was born like that, or he was raised like that. No, he did something on his own. Because by nature, according to, there's one midrash that says, by nature he wasn't so kind. He was actually cruel. He worked on himself. But there's one interesting idea that is expressed in the words, Vayigdal Moshe. And Moshe grew up. It says that in the Torah. He grew up. So when we read those words, he grew up, we think, well, he was once upon a time a child, and now he grew up. He grew up, he was a man. No, that's not the deeper meaning over here. The great Rabbi Meliζ'נסק, of blessed memory, says, you know what those words Vayigdal Moshe means? Moshe became great. Not that he grew up. He became great. How? How does a man become great? Because Vayar besiblotam. He identified with the pain of the Jews. He saw their pain. He saw their bondage. And he identified with it. He took it to heart. He was pained by it himself. That is how he became great. The moment he realized their pain, the moment he identified with it, even though he couldn't do anything about it, but it pained him a lot, that is what enabled him to grow. He became a great man, therefore, just by seeing the plight of his brethren. But why doesn't he want to be the leader? When Hashem asks him, please, go to Paro, you be the one to take the Jews out of Egypt. Of course, I will help you. I will be the behind the scenes. Moshe doesn't want to. Remember? He hesitates, he refuses, sends somebody else. Hashem tells him, if you really care about the Jewish people, then you shouldn't want to delay this. And there's nobody better than you. So come on, you go ahead and do it. Somehow Moshe does not have that strength to want to go ahead and do it. Why not? Hashem is telling you, not somebody else. What's holding him back? He does have those qualities. He was a humble man. Humbleness is, a very, very special quality. You can be kind, you can be sensitive, but if you're humble, you may not necessarily want to get involved too much either because you're humble. You don't want to show off, you don't want to take a leading role. But the rabbis remind us, the makom shen ish ishtadel liyot ish. If you're in a situation where nobody else is going to do it, and you can do it, then you be the one to do it. Don't expect others, don't wait for others, go ahead and do it. And that is the lesson Hashem is teaching Moshe. Moshe, there's no one else. You are the one. You have it, what it is necessary, what it will take to not only lead the Jewish people, but later on to pray for them, to ask for them, that I should forgive them. And of course Hashem knows the souls of everyone. And he knows that Moshe is not only qualified, he's the best for this particular job. So therefore, Moshe, you're the one that's going to do it. Speaking about sensitivity, there are many, many stories of how our rabbis were always sensitive to the plight of their community and did whatever they can to alleviate the pain of the poor, the widows, the orphans. There was a story about Rav Chaim of Brisk, great rabbi who lived about 100 years ago in Europe. There was a fire that burned down a large part of his town. In those days, if one house burned down, it could have affected many, many homes. Even today, fires spread. There's a danger that entire communities, cities, could suffer tremendous damage. In those days, without the equipment to put out the fires, many, many Jews in his community lost their homes. He did not sleep in his bed. He slept, I think, on a bench for I don't know how long, until people were able to come back into their home, until they were able to rebuild their homes. He said when he was asked, why don't you sleep in a normal bed? How can I sleep comfortably when so many other Jews are not? So many Jews are in pain. I cannot sleep comfortably. So as long as they did not sleep in their bed yet, he did not sleep in his bed either. What will happen when someone is sensitive and kind toward others? He will not only appreciate the importance of it, but he will also be able to see the kindness of Hashem in everything that Hashem does in this world. People are blind. They don't see. They don't look around. There's a lot of kindness that Hashem does for us. The whole act of creation is an act of love and kindness. But it has to be that we first understand and appreciate the importance of kindness before we're able to see the kindness of Hashem. It's not that we first see the kindness and then we learn to be kind ourselves. Yes and no. You could, of course, see Hashem's kindness and that can push you to be kinder. Yes. But usually when we cultivate this midah of caring for another human being, it will enable us to see in greater detail, at least, the kindness of Hashem in the world. Otherwise, people do not take notice. Why should they? They're not into it. You need to be into it. Oh, wow. Look at all that kindness from Hashem, how He takes care of all the creatures. How does one come to that conclusion? Well, first has to understand what kindness is. We identify with this midah of kindness, we will be able to see lots of examples of Hashem's kindness in the world. When a person cultivates kindness properly, he will become less selfish. A lot of people have a problem with selfishness. But if you cultivate kindness, which is the opposite of selfishness, then of course it will help us eliminate any of the selfishness that may have been there before. There's one obstacle, however. One of the greatest obstacles, especially in this generation, that is giving people a hard time to really, really, really be kind, you'll be surprised. It's called materialism. Now, people in the past were always sometimes into themselves. This was something that always existed. People that were more into themselves, they were selfish. But because of today's emphasis on materialism, that's causing people to be more concerned about their well-being than about the well-being of others. People have gotten used to a certain standard of living, and they enjoy all those comforts that they feel deprived if something is taken away from them. If it means giving to somebody else at their expense, then they're not going to give in so quickly. They're not going to budge. So materialism is a big problem. Anybody that emphasizes a materialistic lifestyle, you should know, he's more selfish. He may not be very selfish, he still may be charitable, but he's more selfish than otherwise. Materialism is important to him. A lot of people, they worship materialism. The rabbis tell us something very interesting, therefore. A lot of people may have a hard time learning Torah. They study it, they can't absorb it. It just doesn't sit in. It just doesn't feel right. It's just not so interested. Why not? They can't figure it out. They just try their best. Somehow it never penetrates. It never leaves a permanent mark on them. The rabbis tell us whenever that happens, that the Torah is not penetrating you, it's not leaving its mark, don't pray to Hashem. Hashem, please help me that the Torah should penetrate my mind and my heart. No. Instead, pray to Hashem that all the good foods, all the pinukim and tanugot, all the pleasures of life should not enter you. Pray to Hashem that you should not have such a powerful drive or desire to pursue all these vanities, all this materialism. Pray to Hashem that this should come easier to you. Because if you succeed in controlling your appetites and your interest in the vanities, then automatically the Torah will have an easier time penetrating. It's those things that are preventing the Torah from entering your life. You value them too much. And because of that, there's no room for the two. Instead of praying to Hashem, please help me with Torah, which is a beautiful prayer, if you have that weakness of wanting so much materialism, instead pray to Hashem. Hashem, please don't give me this appetite or this strong desire to want to have all these vanities and all this good food. Because wanting to have all those good foods and enjoying all that pleasure that is out there, even if you have the money, we're talking about, that's going to make it difficult for you. It's going to make you more focused on having those things for yourself and not being kind and sensitive towards others. Just like to finish that a very important exercise in cultivating chesed, kindness towards others, is thanking Hashem. Remember we said before that through doing acts of chesed with others, hopefully we will be able to come to appreciate all the chesed that Hashem does with us. One who does not do any chesed for others, one who's ungrateful towards others, then he may come, God forbid, one day to deny the existence of God. So there's a certain relationship here, a certain connection, a certain link between how we act towards others and how we will act with Hashem. If you cannot love another human being, could you ever think of loving Hashem? The Torah says you should love Hashem. The rabbis tell us, if you lack in the love of another human being, if you don't have a true friend, you may not be able to reach the level of love for Hashem. How are you going to ever develop this quality called love to care for someone else? You have to begin with human beings that you see, that you interact with. God you don't see. You have to begin with human beings. Chesed therefore has to be developed in a very, very strong way with human beings. And then, that of course will help you understand all the chesed that Hashem does with you. And what will happen then? Hopefully you will thank Him. You will not be ungrateful to Him. Therefore, let's go back one step. Don't wait for you to thank Hashem when you are ready, when you have developed all that chesed. Start now. That is why we have the Siddur, the prayer book is full of praisers, full of praise, full of prayers, full of thanks, gratitude to Hashem for everything, for that which we know, that we're aware of, for all the miracles that we're not aware of. We thank Hashem for everything. We come out of the bathroom, we thank Hashem that everything is functioning. Thank God we don't need dialysis. Thank God the plumbing is good. No, nothing is clogged. You know how many people, their arteries are clogged? Be thankful. There's so much to be thankful, so much to be grateful for. So get used to this midah of being thankful, because this goes along with chesed. It will help you be kind towards others. You're thanking Hashem, you hopefully will thank people too for what they do for you. Very important midah to train kids. Always say thank you. Be appreciative. Thank Hashem for everything that He has done for you. And last but not least, you will notice that in this parasha, the Torah describes how the Jewish people worked so hard. And what were they making? Bricks. And what were they making with the bricks, or how were they using the bricks? With mortar. Chomer and levanim, it says. The Egyptians made them work hard with the bricks, making the bricks, and with making the mortar, or using the mortar. So even though this makes some sense, we're talking about building material. What I would like to add, however, is that there's a very important hint over here of what's necessary in building, not a pyramid or storage houses that the Torah describes that they built in Egypt, but in building an edifice, a holy edifice, which is either your home, husband and wife, or any other relationship. You're building something. When we build something, we want it to last. We don't want to demolish it. What is going to take to build something that will last? It's going to take bricks. It's going to take certain materials to make it work. Don't forget, besides the bricks, you need the mortar. What is the mortar? The mortar is what will hold the bricks together in place. Otherwise, there could be powerful winds that will knock it down. Earthquake that will shake it. The bricks by themselves without the mortar will not last. For any relationship to be strong and to last, it requires mortar. The mortar, of course, are certain ingredients that we discussed in other lectures that are necessary for a relationship to endure. But I believe that one of those ingredients, perhaps one of the most important ingredients, a fundamental ingredient, is gratitude. Hakarat hatov. If you're not going to recognize a good that was done to you, if you're not going to say thank you and appreciate, you're not going to be grateful, then it's going to fall apart. That is the mortar. That is the mortar, the most important ingredient in the mortar of holding any structure together. Be grateful. Be careful not to be ungrateful. A person who's ungrateful, that's the old Egyptian culture of cruelty, of not caring about other people, not appreciating what they do for you, ignoring all the good that they have done for you. They all go together, all these negative qualities. Be careful from being ever ungrateful. Somebody ever did a favor to you, say thank you every time you see him. Not just once. I said it already. I said thank you already once. No, every single time. And we do so with Hashem. We prayed to Him and thanked Him yesterday. Pray and thank Him every single day. The continuous expression of gratefulness and thankfulness to Hashem, B'ezrat Hashem, make us stronger people in being able to resist all the vanities, in realizing that the most important and more beautiful thing in life is having a strong and healthy relationship with human beings and with Hashem. Amen.